Welcome everyone. Welcome to the webinar for implementing design thinking. Here's our agenda. We'll do quick introductions, talk about requirements versus need of the customer, a customer-centric mindset. And back a couple of months back, we had another coach on our team talk about the customer-centric mindset, how it is implemented in SAFe. This webinar, in a way, is a continuation of the same thought. Talks about design thinking, and I will set up the context and take the discussion forward from there. A couple of tools that can be used for design thinking: personas and focus on the customer, empathy maps, journey maps, another type of map, which is a story map, and some innovation games. Finally, we'll keep some time for Q&A. If you have a question that comes to mind, please use the Q&A feature or post it in the chat window. Here's a short intro about myself. I'm the founder of 10 Agile, been an enterprise Agile coach for a number of years. My prior life, I have held various roles in as an architect, a program manager, portfolio manager, and worked for a number of companies. I've been in this industry for over 20 years. I am a certified SAFe 5.0 program consultant and a coach. I'm really passionate about implementing Agile and highlighting the practitioner aspect of Agile. So let's let's open up that browser window and type in the URL that you see there. It says ahaslides.com/10agile. And if you would just choose a radio button that best describes your role, you're going to see something like this. And I'm going to click open, so you should be able to access this link and make a selection. Okay, great. Thanks for taking the survey. So let's start with a quick question. What do you see here? If you look at this picture, what might be missing? You could unmute yourself, shout it out loud, or type it in the chat window, whatever you prefer. Yep. Where is the door handle? Okay, let's take a look at another example. How about this one? What might be wrong with this picture? Yeah, how to open, push, or pull, and exactly which side does the door open? It doesn't say. How about this one? You may have used WhatsApp. This is one of the most used chatting tool. They introduced a feature where you could delete the message. You could delete it for yourself, and you could also choose an option where it doesn't show up for the person who's receiving it. What might be wrong with this picture? That's true. How do you tell what you deleted? But it also makes the other person wonder, why did you delete the message? Now, this blurb doesn't show up only on your side. It actually shows up on the recipient's phone as well. How about this one? You've got the latest iPhone. You're out in the wild, and you're looking to take a photograph. You've got the perfect moment. Moment you click the button, it says there's not enough available storage to take a photo. What might be wrong with this message? It doesn't say how much is enough storage. I mean, I can click on settings and go there and maybe remove a photo, a couple of photos. Not a good design, right? So I'm taking these examples from a UI or UX perspective, but the point I'm trying to make here is good design is actually a lot harder to notice than poor design. In part because good designs fit our needs so well that the design is invisible, serving us without drawing attention to itself. If it's a bad design, it screams out its inadequacies, making itself very noticeable. I'm picking up this comment from Don Norman, Design of Everyday Things, copyright of Scaled Agile. So customer centricity is a mindset. And we talked about that a couple of months ago in the webinar that was covered by Prateek. Whenever a customer-centric enterprise makes a decision, it deeply considers the effect it'll have on its end users. You don't want to lose those users. You want to make sure that they're happy about the design. And you might be thinking how that feature is going to be interpreted in the short term, but I'm sure your user will be looking at all various aspects, even the long term. All customer-centric enterprises deliver a whole product solution that are designed with a deep understanding of customer needs. We're focusing on a key aspect here, which is the lifetime value of your customer. So continuing the same thought, design thinking is a customer-centric development process. And the key word here is development process. A customer-centric approach was more of a mindset. So we're taking the mindset and we're saying, how do we create products that are profitable and sustainable over their life cycle? And it goes beyond the traditional focus on features and functions. Instead, it emphasizes understanding the problem to be solved, the context in which the solution is going to be used, and the evolution of that solution. Now, take a moment here and think about how many development teams, organizations that you work with, how many of those have a design thinking approach that focuses on whole product development. And if you are looking to venture on that journey, this webinar is going to help identify some of the tools that can help ease the pain around identifying customer needs and designing solutions that provide a more whole product approach. So with SAFE, we have a double diamond approach to design thinking. There's each diamond that you see here focuses on divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So you're understanding and exploring the options when you're looking to understand the problem, and then evaluating the options and making choices. When you get to a point where you've nicely defined what is it that the customer wants, we take another approach on exploring various possible options, designing the solution. And by regular feedback, we eliminate the options that don't work. We create prototypes, we create minimum viable products that can help converge to a point solution. So the double diamond approach creates products that are desirable, viable, and feasible. Because we all know turning back the development process incurs a lot of rework. It's costly, it's time consuming, nobody likes it. And your customer is obviously not going to be happy about that. So the double diamond approach helps you discover all various facets of the customer problem and then converge and come up with a holistic definition of the customer problem. And then you apply divergent thinking once again to evaluate all possible design options. You could be looking at building the solution, buying a third party, a COTS product. You could be looking at moving to a cloud-enabled solution, whatever the case might be. But you would need some feedback from your stakeholders to converge at the right solution. Now, there are certain challenges with design thinking, especially with customer discovery. When you start on the process of design thinking, and you might know that you have data from prior interactions with the customer, but that data already has some biases built in. And that inhibits a fresh perspective, which indicates that the hidden customer needs or the needs of the customer that may have evolved are not going to be reflected by that data. And this is an assumption most enterprises make, most development teams also make. They just look at the prior data and without a second thought, they would start to make decisions around that data. You may have heard about walking in the shoes of the customer to gain that immersive experience of their pain points. Goes without saying, this is I don't see anyone debating that. And the idea here is it provides greater insight into designing a solution that meet their needs. Because unless and until you're experiencing the environment that the customer is operating in, you may be able to listen to them and understand their pain points, but you wouldn't be able to experience them. Experiencing those pain points when you're operating as a customer is going to bring those insights, because you have you have a couple of brains who are looking at the situation from a different point of view. So instead of designing a product and being limited by the scope of the product, now you're thinking mostly how the customer feels using this product. And then we have a challenge around workplace politics. And that challenge can bring chaos and insecurities, especially when leaders are looking to meet their quarterly targets and they're focused on sales and profit and revenue numbers. So the customer discovery process is inherently variable. And you might not be able to essentially articulate and justify what comes out of that process, because a lot of it has to evaluate various options. This variability is what puts leaders outside of their comfort zone. And if you're unable to navigate those politics, these things can and most probably will shut down any innovation. So let's talk about some of the design thinking tools that can utilize the organizational structure that everyone in the organization likes to operate in very well. They live and die by that structure. But these tools can operate within the structure and also help create innovative ideas. So the first one, and some of you may have already used that, talks about the persona. Then we have empathy maps, journey maps, and story maps. This by no means is an exhaustive list of tools that are available, but for this introductory presentation, I wanted to make sure that I covered these four. So let's delve into persona. A persona is a fictitious representation of a real person, and we're trying to focus on the customer. We're trying to understand their needs, and by creating a persona, we are providing a context of a real person to the teams who are going to be working and thinking like the person for whom they're designing or exploring requirements. So here, Carrie the consumer, age 36, lives in Reno, Nevada. They spend about 10 minutes in the app that we're designing. Well, what do we know about Carrie? A working dad with 3 children, blah, blah, blah. And their need is to have their package delivered on time so that they can maximize time with their family. A couple of things they like the technology. They're not home on some weekends. They don't want to compute. They don't just want a computer, only tablets and phones. And text is their most favorite form of communication at suppliers. Now, you can start to visualize if, on the other hand, I was talking about someone who is not that tech savvy. Their favorite form of communication might not be a text message. They might prefer the regular mail. And these attributes about Carrie, the consumer, helps teams think about the context in which this solution is going to operate, the items in the program backlog, and the objectives that the teams have put together. Do they truly relate and align to Carrie's needs? And do we refer to Carrie during iteration planning? Let's now take a look at empathy map. Empathy map identifies and focuses our persona and tries to understand how this person is thinking and feeling. Now, I'm covering the use case where Emma is going to look for a house and she's looking for a mortgage, and she's worried about the competition from other buyers, thinking about documentation, what all is needed, and maybe it's the first time she's applying for a mortgage. She's just going to get overwhelmed with information. And at the core of it, she's hoping to get her dream house. In addition, what is Emma seeing outside? What is she seeing around her? There's too much information for sure, and driven by Zillow price metrics, right? Just the Zillow has made it so easy just to type in an address and see all available history. Inaccurate mortgage calculators, right? You're a newbie, you're trying to work the numbers. Maybe what you find on the internet isn't accurate or correct. Neighborhood banks, because they're easily accessible, you might walk in to those banks and they would want to land that business. Real estate agents and mortgage companies, there's so many out there. They're just getting so much information. What are they hearing? Friends and family have an ear, and they are providing all sorts of recommendations. Um, the friends might be recommending a bank, a mortgage company. They might get some information that must have been applicable a year ago or 2 years ago, not so much today or 6 months from now. And finally, how are they acting? How are they processing all of this? What are they thinking, feeling, seeing, and hearing? And how are they acting out? They're maybe reaching out to a loan officer, looking to lock a rate while they're also searching for houses. They're running around to meet document deadlines, not enough research, which is causing them to settle for the easiest solution, and which might not necessarily be the best deal. So they have a lot on their plate. But knowing this about your prospective customer can give you the edge as you brainstorm and understand these various aspects about the persona. So let's take a journey with our prospective customer, and they're looking for a loan. The first thing we need to do is document the various process steps that are going to help them for the loan. And we're going to take the approach of a mortgage company looking to provide that loan. So say they have a website, they're looking to attract customers, they provide a quick rate quote. You have an opportunity to submit the loan information. Then an eligibility decision and underwriting takes place. The back office processes all that information. They extend the loan terms, award the loan, set up the payment terms. You get paying your EMI, and at some point in time in the future, you would close the loan. So this, for people who may recognize this format, is representing a value stream, the value that you're providing to your customer, which is a loan that they can repay. Now, as we have identified this value stream, let's delve a little bit deeper and see if we can experience their journey as they go through the various stages of deciding which kind of options are available to them, learning, clarifying their goals, choosing what to buy, applying for information, purchasing, and finally completing. By documenting these individual stages and making use of the thinking and feeling portion from the empathy map, say we have a young couple, um, these are the things that they would need to do at each stage. Decide to buy a home, what kind of home they want, they'll have to make that decision. Learn about the mortgage, calculate the budget, compare the mortgages, apply for the mortgage loan, get the assessment done, sign the contract, and move. But this is a typical process that goes through these various stages. So, what are the things that the young couple feels good about? They want to raise their kids the same way, and they love their neighborhood, so they're probably looking at the same location. They're fairly comfortable understanding that neighborhood. They know a real estate agency will probably save them money, so they feel confident about that. They were happy with the real estate agent who did a great job clarifying their goals. Documentation has to be done, but that'll pass quickly. The bank officer handled everything. And the bank officer also kept them updated at every point. The things that they're dicey about, it's a large purchase. It's scary. They don't want to make a mistake, so they're definitely concerned about it. Visiting the bank, it may be helpful for consultation, may not necessarily be, they're not 100% sure. Then selecting a good real estate agency, trying to figure out why does the bank need paper copies, negotiating a sale, and when they move in, they'll have to figure out how to clean the place, set it up, and all that. The items in red indicate what are they really truly scared about and not happy about. Can we really find a home that we love and can afford? Right? That's a big question. Why would you want to move into something that A, you can't afford, or you're not going to like it that much? Form filling could be time consuming. Banks should probably already know your details. And they're trying to figure out why our neighborhood bank can't do this all online. It took a lot longer to close the sale than they expected. So they might have missed out on a particular rate code that they were looking at. So if you go through the journey and be able to identify the thinking and feeling part at each individual stage, as a bank, you now have the opportunity to create products and services that can satisfy the real customer needs. You can also define technology opportunities at each stage that can be very beneficial for your customer. So you want to do this activity with somebody who represents the customer in your organization or with a real customer. This is an extremely beneficial activity that helps provide clarity and gets all the assumptions validated. By taking a journey with the customer and taking them through the various stages, you're now able to relate to them at a much deeper level. Taking a step further, now we have an understanding of the journey of the persona. We know what they're thinking and feeling and hearing. Let's now talk about designing a feature for a mortgage portal that can review the application details, accept the information, qualify the application, get the home appraised, write the loan, and get it funded. So we've been able to break it down into these individual chunks. And at each activity, we can identify atomic level details, which will probably end up being its own story for each section. And by doing that, you're now able to create a list of stories and put them on the wall, which nicely maps to a workflow. So say they come up to the mortgage portal, you have a landing page, you have an amortization calculator that provides the necessary information. They can fill in the application details, they can get the mortgage amortization information and the rate and the amount. And then the application can be qualified. You could probably provide a status check. They can come back and look at how things are progressing in the back office with easy updates. The home gets appraised, underwriters write the loan, and loan gets funded. So I'm sure you can realize that there are some activities that are must-have. And this by no means is an exhaustive list of stories. But as you start to build out each functionality, you can add more stories underneath. And then probably just by drawing a dotted line, you could figure out what you need for the minimum viable product. So a story map helps you focus on a feature functionality that has a workflow and helps identify stories that relate to a specific feature. And you can break them down into must-have and nice-to-have items. Which design thinking tool is used to capture workflow? I'm going to let you think about it and provide the answer. A story map is a design thinking tool that's used to capture workflow. And the journey map definitely is identifying the journey overall, but the keyword here was workflow, and that's the story map. So yeah, this was kind of dicey to begin with, and I was hoping you'd make the distinction between participating in a journey and really truly looking at the workflow. That is critical. So you want to have a story map for features that have a workflow. The story map doesn't have a lot of value if the feature in question does not have a workflow. Let's talk about some of the innovation gains, which which can help engage your stakeholders and better understand their needs. There are many benefits to use the innovation games, such as discovering unmet needs, co-creating product and services, prioritizing needs, driving innovation, even conducting retrospectives, um, conducting market research, and knowing what works and doesn't work with your product and services. So let's take a look at a few innovation games, and we can see how they create a really fun way to engage your stakeholders. The first one I'm talking about, I'm not going to cover all possible innovation games. There are so many out there, but I just wanted to touch on these four that I think maybe people would have picked them up as they're learning about innovation games. I know I definitely have worked with these and found them very helpful. So pruning the product tree. When you're pruning, you're basically trying to shape the product instead of thinking of it more as a cutting exercise. And what you would do is create a tree, and each leaf on the tree would represent a feature functionality. The main trunk and the limbs or branches of the trunk could represent individual categories. And the base of the tree going up could represent a current state. You could have a dotted line that talks about all the features and functionality identified in the current state. You could also then put up leaves that you know are nice to have features, say in the near term. These might be on the roadmap. And then finally, future state features that could extend all the way out. Why might you think this technique is helpful? Any thoughts on what benefit you get out of creating a product tree? If you want to type it in the chat window, yeah, it's a visual representation, exactly. But it also, these various branches, think of a situation where you only have these two features that are way out there for this specific branch. And your development teams still have to maintain the source code because this is a valid category for the product, but it's not used a lot. And the feature that we have for this category is way out there in the future. The current state doesn't have any, the near term. So it talks about balancing the product features in a way where the visual representation of the branches and individual features provides that cue. You would not have thought about it in looking at the product backlog or looking at the roadmap. But if you think of it in this way, each category or each branch representing a particular category and the leaves tied to the branch can help identify how the product is going to evolve. So ultimately, when you do this activity with product owners, product managers, and even technical architects, you want to sit down and, yeah, it can also highlight dependencies between features. That's definitely the case. And but it's also very helpful in balancing the items that might show up in the current state versus near term and future state. The question about dependencies is a very interesting one. And I'm often thinking about if you have a feature that's dependent on another feature, then A dependent on B, and you have to have feature A done sooner for feature B to be delivered. So a lot of those one-to-many relationships that exist between the features end up getting prioritized higher. And those activities can also be represented here. So prioritization takes a different meaning here. We attach an element of balance to the prioritization. Fantastic. Let's take a look at another innovation game. This one helps you shape your product to market needs. Speedboat. Some of you may have done or utilized this technique already. Here's a speedboat. Think of this as your product or service offering. Everything's going great. The evolution of the product is happening at a fast pace. Your product is being utilized. Things are great. But what's this? There's an anchor. This is slowing the speedboat down. This is something that your customers don't like about the product. They like everything else, but they don't like this. So it's acting as an anchor. It's slowing your speedboat down. Wait, here's another one, and another one, and oh my God, another one. So you could conduct this activity with your customers and stakeholders and ask them to identify, maybe put a sticky next to each anchor as they draw these anchors on what are the features that they don't like. And this could become a exercise where people end up complaining a lot. So you were going to have to need somebody who is a really good facilitator and can truly run this activity in an objective fashion. And I've seen speedboats that end up being a complete list of anchors all across, and you end up walking away dejected, not necessarily really interested in working on the fixes or features that the customer does not like. But when it's viewed objectively, it's a really great exercise because it indicates what features about the product does your customer not like. Here's another innovation game that talks about 2020 vision. You've all gone to or know someone who has needed glasses, and the glasses help you get that 2020 vision, right? It's based on the same concept where what we do is we sit with the customer and create a couple of sections on the wall, and anything above that line is high priority area. Anything below this line is low priority, and the section in the middle is a reference benchmark. So the customers or the product owner or product manager, whoever is representing the customer, they have a stack of cards with them that represent features. Now, one by one, they can place a feature in any of these three sections. And depending on how and where they placed the feature, you can identify the priority for a particular feature. So this activity takes a couple of iterations. Product owners, product managers, they would go up and put up a sticky for a feature. But when all the features have been placed, you now have an opportunity to adjust and think about the priority associated with each feature. And in a way, it helps clarify vision. So hence the name 2020 vision. Finally, the innovation game that talks about remembering the future. What we ask is we ask customers and stakeholders to jot down on a 3x5 card that they are, let's assume that they are 6 months into the future or a year into the future. What are the things that they like about what they're seeing around themselves when they're using the product? Here the graphic represents a futuristic city or a city that they would want to live in 6 months or a year down the line. So maybe the stakeholders have something like this in mind, or they probably want a city look and feel with enough greenery and space to walk around. Or maybe there are other stakeholders that are really truly thinking like the Jetsons. And this is a great way of asking them to document, asking them to create the future that they desire by going into the future and jotting down what they like or dislike about it. And I do have a comment in the chat window. I've done this activity with a slight twist on business transformation Kickstarter meeting. Fantastic. Would love to hear about that. If you want to go off mute and talk about it for a moment.
Hi there.
Nawaz, you're unmuted.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. We can probably continue the conversation, come back to it. I don't know if I can hear you, Nawaz, but thanks for definitely sharing that. This is absolutely an interesting technique. So it helps understand your customer's definition of success. So thinking about these 4 innovation games, which innovation game shapes your product to market needs. Let's go back to browser window, and I'm opening it up for submission. So the question is, which of these four innovation games shapes your product to market needs? All right, we have one more second. Prune the product tree, exactly. It helps shape your product to the market needs. A speedboat is also thinking in the same on the same wavelength, but it's looking for items that customers don't like. So yeah, in a way, it's also identifying those features that should be removed from the product or maybe don't spend a whole lot of time on. But yeah, pruning the product tree where you have the tree and the different branches helps balance out those features so that a particular category doesn't get overwhelmed and then you don't have anything to show up for another category. Great, everybody got that right almost. So let's continue. And we're almost at the end of our quick introduction to implementing design thinking. I wanted to leave you with a few additional resources and references to read more about it, learn more about it. It's a fantastic technique that is extremely valuable to enterprises. Why design thinking works, there's a fantastic Harvard Business Review article by Jean Litka, and she talks about how design thinking is so critical, and she goes into more detail about how to make design thinking work and why traditionally it works. She's also got a fantastic new book coming out. She's written extensively on this subject, but the latest book out is Experience. It's not out yet. The Kindle version, I think, is available, but the print version is going to be coming out in a couple of months. Experiencing Design, the Innovator's Journey. You can find it on Amazon. There's also a Global Design Thinking Alliance, and I didn't know about that. And I was researching about this concept, and I found that there are efforts to expand the knowledge base, and there's a Global Design Thinking Alliance. If you're interested in learning more about it, go to the website. And finally, a website for innovation games, where you can learn more about the innovation games, not just the four that we talked about today, but many others, and give it a shot. And but definitely be interested in hearing your experiences on these innovation games. So we've come to the end of this webinar. If you have any questions, please post them on the Q&A section. I see there's one, how to do just enough design up front. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And the answer in part lies in the aspect of progressively elaborating your requirements. And as you get to know more about each individual requirement, the design process typically kicks in, and you start to fill in the details about that solution that could probably fit the requirement. The approach I would recommend is not to think about just one specific solution, but think about some variations and utilize the Scaled Agile's principles, Scaled Agile Frameworks, principle number 3, which talks about assessing variability and leveraging the options that are out there. So variability is inherent to any process. Your job is to leverage it and come up with options that you can create prototypes around, MVP, and not spend a whole lot of time designing upfront, but coming up with a design that can allow you to get feedback and see if that particular option works or doesn't. I will definitely be sharing the recording. I reckon in order to do an empathy map, you need to be emotionally connected with your user. Any techniques you can suggest to use to establish the emotional connection? Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that it goes without saying. But the answer lies in an elaborate or an extensive definition of the persona. So if you can find a real user that fits that specific persona, you should obviously connect with them and talk to them. But stepping into the shoes of a user is perhaps the best way if you're looking to have that immersive experience and really understand. And you're going to find a fantastic example on the Harvard Business Review article that I just mentioned here. Jean Litka talks about how getting into the shoes of a customer helped change the perspective. And, and the perspective change led to a completely different approach on designing the product. Instead of constraining the user, they were now thinking of what the user enjoyed. And the design of their product, it was completely changed. And they started to look at the features that the product can include, which can make the customer more happy. So I suggest reading that article. It's a fantastic article. And I'm happy to have a detailed conversation with you. If you'd like to send me an email or a chat message, I'm at asimk at 10agile. I'm happy to post that as well. Any other questions, anything else that you'd like to talk about today? There's another question indicating, how do we make time for participating in innovation games? That is a challenge for sure. I think making use of some of the virtual tools and time boxing them is a great way. Given the limitations that we have in the virtual environment that we operate in, I've also found prior videos about innovation games. Not a big one, but maybe less than 2 minutes or so that they can quickly look at their cell phone and see how those innovation games are played. It gives them a real view into the value that innovation games provide. And it also helps your job become so much easier because when that invitation for an innovation game is coming from you, it might not have the same message, and it might be riddled with biases. So they might be making some assumptions on why you might be asking them to dedicate 2-hour session on that innovation game. So make use of the videos that are available out there, the virtual tools. Scaled Agile Framework has Safe Collaborate that has a ton of templates and tools. So if you were a member of the Safe framework, you have access to that. And if you are Safe certified, then also you have access to those tools. But I'm happy to share more information about that as well. Great. Thanks, everyone, for your time today. And this was fantastic. I truly appreciate everyone's participation. And we will have another webinar coming up next month. So stay tuned and have a good night.